Sir. Sir. That is my reflector. That is not your bed. What do you have to say for yourself? Well, okay. Croeso friends, hello and welcome back to Opus L&I, where we are back and better than some things, I guess. I'm reasonably sure that most of you are familiar with the saga of my tech issues, but for those of you who may have missed it, the Cliff's Notes. A couple of weeks ago, when Mercury was in Gatorade, my external hard drive stopped working. The one with all of my video footage. I tried switching the cable, I tried switching the computer, I tried switching the cable and the computer, but nothing. It would spin up, but it wasn't being read by the computer at all. This is the second external hard drive that's broken on me in the last 4 months, so obviously I'm annoyed. My cousin posited that they might be failing because I didn't have them plugged into a powered USB hub. So I plugged in my powered USB hub and my computer went pop and turned off. One panic attack and one extremely helpful and understanding Apple support tech later, thanks Will, and I was able to take my computer in to get everything fixed. Everything that broke was under warranty, so it didn't cost me anything to get them serviced or replaced, which is great. But I had to be without my computer at a fairly critical editing moment, and I still don't have the data from my external hard drive back because it's going to take up to 30 days. So I've been fighting against some pretty heavy motivational barriers this past fortnight. But I'm here now, and I've got the next few videos all lined up, and as soon as I have the data back from the hard drive, I can release the Arthurian Saxon dress remix we've all been waiting for. But for now, we carry on with the next project. I'm not sure if you've noticed, croissants, but this channel is extremely LGBTQIA+ affirming. Just a little. If you're from the outside of the US, you may not know that October 11th is National Coming Out Day here. It's a celebration of queerness and affirmation for people who are ready to make known to the world their particular flavor of queer. And for everyone else who is not ready, or who is not safe, or who are still questioning, you are also valid and valued and loved, and you absolutely have a place in this community. I have been working on something recently, the answer to a question I asked in a video ages ago, a London hood pattern. It's fairly simple, comes in 3 sizes, and can be sewn as a closed front or open front buttoned hood. It will be available as a printable PDF download on my coffee shop for $7 US starting November 1st. And because I have an overinflated sense of my own hilarity, I thought I would celebrate both Coming Out Day and my pattern coming out by making a gay ass hood, TM. So everyone grab a nice cuppa of your drink of choice. In honor of the fact that it is astronomically fall, even if we're still having 90-degree days, I am having a tea from Weeping Glass called Necromancy. It's from their October offerings line, and it's a black Assam tea with vanilla bean and maple, and it is so good, friends. Anyway, let's get into it. The first thing I need to do in order to test my pattern is print it out. I'm sure you'll notice that there are no real markings other than just the outline. I'm using this test print to make sure that it will fit me before finalizing the rest of the pattern. Now that I have it printed, I have to tape it together. I'll use my little paper crafting straight edge cutter to cut off the excess along 2 sides so that the lines match up nicely. I also took a tip from Maggie at Magpie Atelier and snagged some Frog brand painter's tape, the yellow delicate adhesive kind. I'm so glad I did. This stuff sticks really nicely but allows for repositioning where necessary. After everything is taped together, I need to pick my size and get that cut out. I'm making the medium size, so I'll cut along all of the dotted lines except the dart slit. Instead, I'll cut a small notch at the end of that slit and a hole at the top so I can mark the bottom and top and then connect the 2 ends. Time to cut out the hood. I'm using tailor's chalk and working it in short lines because this wool is way more wiggly on the bias than I was expecting. Once I have it all marked, I'll cut out the pieces, marking the gore slit on both sides of the hood. The last piece is the lyra pipe or long tail, and it doesn't actually have a pattern piece. I just measured out a long piece twice as wide as the lyra pipe extension piece on the hood pattern. You can cut it all out as one piece by extending that out if you have the fabric, or by piecing it together like I'm doing. Then I'll do the same exact thing for the linen lining, tracing and cutting all of the pieces. You'll notice that I leave out the lyra pipe on the lining. There's no real reason to line that bit. Next, I'll add in the gores to both the wool and linen pieces. If you're interested in seeing this process more in depth, check out my gore tutorial, link in the cards and the description. I'm sewing the points in by hand, and then I will sew the rest of the length by machine. And then it's time to iron the seam allowances outward, trim the underneath side, and fell everything down. This is especially important on the wool since it's fairly loosely woven, and I don't want to take the chance that the seam allowances will disintegrate. And again, same process with the linen lining. Gore point, machine sewing, ironing, and felling. After the gores are inserted, it's time to attach the lyra pipe onto the hood and then sew up the back seams on both the hood and the lining. And then everything gets a good pressing and more felling of the seam allowances. I should note that I didn't bother to fell the lyra pipe seam. There's no strain in that area, so I'm not worried about that seam coming undone. It's more probable that when making a medieval garment, it would be flat-lined rather than bag-lined. That is to say, the outer and lining fabrics would both have been laid one over the other and then treated as one piece when sewing everything together, rather than sewing the outer and the lining up separately and attaching them together at the outer edges. I tend to like bag lining hoods though, because I find it easier to manage everything separately, and if I have a hood with a seam at the top of the head, I don't get a stripe of the fashion fabric along the top edge of the turned back hood brim. Since this is an open hood and will close with buttons at the front, I will pin the pieces together at the center front as well. The very front edge of the hood will be left open so I can turn the hood right side out. I find it's easier to press and sew a straight hem close than a curved one, which is why the turning opening won't be in the bottom edge. I'll keep the lyre pipe out of the way by folding it up and pinning it so it doesn't accidentally get caught while sewing everything together. I forgot to film it, but I clipped the corners and notched the curves before turning the hood right side out and pressing everything. I also turned in the seam allowances of the front hood opening and pressed them to make it easier to sew that closed later. Stick around after this brief commercial break to see the finishing touches. Time for buttons. I chose swatches from past projects in all of the colors of the rainbow. The fabric is fantastically queer, but it is a couple colors short of a full rainbow. To make the buttons, I'm using a circle template to mark the stitching line, and then I cut a square around the circle. Next, I will do a simple running stitch along the marked line, ending on the opposite side from the knot. Pull the thread so that the fabric starts to gather into a little pouch, and then turn the excess fabric into that pouch to make a stuffed button. Pull the thread as tight as you can, and then I generally do another line of stitching along the gathered edge for strength and to pull it even more tightly closed. Then I knot the end of the thread and make 13 more. I have 14 buttons to spread over 17 inches, and that is not easily divisible, especially for someone who is not great at math. So instead of trying to do an equation, I'm just going to lay the buttons out along the edge of the hood in a pleasing fashion. I do want to make sure that there is one button in the corner under the chin to make sure that it sits nice and tight when buttoned. The 14th century hood finds in London show buttons sewn to the very edge of the fabric instead of being set in from the edge like we would normally sew buttons today. I am using doubled linen thread here and taking a couple of stitches between button and hood, leaving a bit of space in between the two. Then I will wrap the thread around the stitches, drawing it tight to form a thread shank that will enable the buttonhole to sit closed when buttoned. After all the buttons are on, it is time to make the buttonholes. I've marked out where they all go, and I'll start by using my fancy buttonhole chisel to punch the holes. I'm using black silk thread and a buttonhole stitch worked all the way around the hole to secure the edges. After the first couple, I also started doing a quick running stitch around each hole just to keep both pieces of fabric in place while sewing the buttonhole stitch. Here we are at the end of yet another successful project. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. Be on the lookout for the official release announcement for the Londinium hood on all of my social media platforms. And please remember that you are valid and valuable and completely loved. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I upload every other Friday, and if you like reminders, ring the notification bell. If you want to find me on other social media, I am at Opus LNI everywhere, and I will put all of those links in the description below, along with a link to my Ko-fi where you can eventually find this pattern and where I post exclusive donor content and have my web shop. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Well. Texas!